day one of Ascend, which is a 3-day virtual event. And the focus is helping women who are in business, women who are doing any type of business, entrepreneurs, helping you remember or re-remember actually who you really are so that you can tap into all of your gifts, your intuition, and build a successful business that feels peaceful and easy and not like 24/7 hustle and grit. So let's see here. Yes, to the next slide. There we go. All right. So you know that you are in the right place if you're either an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur in a soul-led business, or you have a dream in your heart, a vision that you are being called to bring forward into the world. And maybe you're still sitting on like how you want to do that or how you want to expand upon that dream. And also, you find yourself maybe on a spiritual journey to find yourself, your whole self. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what I mean by a spiritual journey. And I'll share a little bit more about my story because what I will say is oftentimes it might feel like you start on, for any of you, if you feel like you're kind of like personal development junkies, like if you love doing personal development type classes, doing different things to like learn more about yourself, oftentimes that's how it can start. And before you know it, you kind of realize like you're on this whole spiritual journey. That's kind of how it was for me. But if any of this resonates, you're in the right place. And I'm going to make that smaller a second. Okay, there we go. All right, and I want to just elaborate. So I promote this event that we're in for soul-led business owners, spiritual entrepreneurs, or soulpreneurs. And here's what I really mean by that, because obviously anybody can say like, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. But I will say if we're working on embodying any of these terms, all kind of means the same thing. What that's looking at is that we're looking to do business differently, different than the typical kind of patriarchal running a business from a place of hustle and grind and like working all the time and feeling overwhelmed. So, in contrast to that, a soul led business owner or a spiritual entrepreneur is looking to embody an entrepreneur that's combining the divine feminine and their spiritual gifts and intuition with the divine masculine so that you can take inspired action to build your soul led business with the goal of being able to support people in some way and raise the vibration of the planet. So, oftentimes, women who are building a soul led business, it's going to feel like it's just something like you're meant to do, like you're being pulled to do this. And to be honest, nowhere in here am I saying that, like, you have to be a full time business owner, that you have to be working XYZ hours in your business. Like, none of that matters. It really can be that you are just trying to build something that you're passionate about. And it doesn't matter if it's on the side, if it's something that you're doing part time. I actually know a lot of successful, I'm in the online business owner space, but I know a lot of online business owners who still also either hold part time or full time employment. And they're still working and on building this kind of business, this soul led business that they just are feeling called to do and called to share. So, again, if that resonates with you, you are in the right room. The other reason why I felt really called to host this 3-day event, which I'm excited, this event also is kicking off when I will be opening the doors next week to my group healing container called Higher Self Awakening. So it's also to help give context and build up and share a little bit more about what I do and also just help soul driven entrepreneurs rise. But also, Ascend is really its own standalone event because together, when we come together, we rise. And especially when a room of spiritual entrepreneurs connect their magic in the world, it actually helps raise the vibration of the planet. So, whether you are here live or you're watching the replay, I truly appreciate you taking the time to be here live or, again, setting aside to watch this later. It really makes a difference. So I appreciate you for spending some time with me. I will briefly introduce myself. So I'm Maria Service. I am a quantum past life healer, subconscious reprogrammer, Akashic Records channeler, and a podcast host. Some other things that I have worked towards during an 8-year healthcare career. I always found it fascinating to learn more about resilience and wellness. So I have an anxiety management specialist certification. I am trained to use heart math biofeedback and EFT tapping, which is like an acupressure somatic technique to help with calming your nervous system. I have a master's in occupational therapy, as well as more recently, I obtained a certification to use subconscious reprogramming with the technique called theta healing. And then I also last fall took a certification to learn more about using the Akashic Records, one for my own personal healing journey. But more than that, what I didn't know at the time when I signed up for this course was that I actually really am meant to use the Akashic Records in my business to help other spiritual entrepreneurs heal and do this inner work so that everybody can rise. And so with that, when I'm in the Akashic Records, I don't know if you'd call it like my specialty, but an area that I really like to work in is past lives. And we're going to talk about some and all of this in this container here, but I subscribe to the belief, and it's part of what I've seen when I've been in the Akashic Records doing my own meditations, that this is not my first incarnation here. There have been many past lives, and oftentimes we can bring forward some of that trauma, which then is inhibiting us with either feeling worthy, with feeling enough, with feeling like we can grow and succeed and grow our businesses. So a lot of different blocks can happen, whether it's from things that happened to us in this life and also past lives. So that's a little bit about me on, I don't know, kind of like a professional level. I also want to share that I'm also a boy mom, a wife. I love to do yoga. I love crystals. For those that are into astrology, I'm an Aries sun, so I have an April birthday. I'm a Virgo moon and a Sagittarius rising. And then you can also read a few other things. So again, when it comes to like personal development junkie, I've taken a lot of tests. I know a lot of things about myself, which has been fun over the last probably 10 years of my own personal development journey. And I also have found that the more I go deeper, the more I unravel. It's also been invitations to my own healing at different levels. I also love to read. I could live off pizza and spaghetti. And as I mentioned before, I'm a former healthcare worker. So at this time, I'm just going to ask, why does that sometimes go away? All right, so things that we're going to cover today. I am going to give kind of a definition and share more about what is the Akashic Records, because I do want you to know the group Akashic Records are open right now. So like the Akashic Records for this call, kind of connecting us all together with our high vibrational light being team or spirit guides, angels, however you want to call that. The Akashic Records are open, so I will share more about what that is. We're going to do some intention setting and talk about, as I mentioned, I'll share a little bit more about my journey of finding myself. Today's focus is going to be on intuition and diving into how can we tap into our intuition. I do believe that that is the best way to grow soul-led businesses that feel more in ease and more in alignment with ourselves, is by tapping into our full intuition. I also will channel a message from the Akashic Records. So with the Akashic Records open, what that means is I also just like receive intuitive information. It's kind of also how I put this event together, but later on, I'm just going to channel through a message directly from them. That's going to help us just remember who we are at a spiritual soul level. And then we'll just talk about some takeaways, and then I'm going to share kind of a bonus healing that I will send out to anybody who's registered for Ascend. Something that if someone wants to die, if you're like, if you enjoy this call, you're excited for day 2 and day 3, and you want something to maybe sit on and simmer with over the weekend, I have a healing called Heal the Hustle that kind of goes along with our topic today. So I will share that link at the end as well. Okay, so what I want to do first, though, is I want you to take some time to write down. I would recommend having a pen and paper nearby for this, if you can. I'm sure you guys probably already do. But I want you to take some time to set an intention for being at this virtual event today, or for watching this virtual event today, or, you know, whenever you're watching the replay. I want you to take some time to think about, what are you hoping to learn, discover, be inspired about, maybe hoping to let go of, like maybe you're just wanting to be in this container to help you let go of limiting beliefs, or like, to shift your mindset perspective on something. But I want you to just take a moment to write down, what is your intention for being here? And this does not have to be like paragraphs long, but just, why did you hop on the call today? Or why are you taking time to watch the replay? Because what we know is that we take back our personal power when we begin to be more intentional with our time and with what we're doing and why we're doing it. The more we get curious on, okay, what am I doing? Can I be present to that? And why am I doing this? We take back our personal power each time we do that. So I'll just give you each a moment. And then if you don't mind, if there's any aspect of your answer that you'd be willing to share in the chat box, like of why you're here today or what you're hoping to discover or get. So if you wouldn't mind also sharing and typing something in the chat as well, if you'd like to share it with the group. And I will share mine too. And to be honest, I wrote mine right on the screen, which is, my intention for you all is to help spiritual entrepreneurs remember who you are. Ah, yes, Jess, I love it. Continuing to lean into my greater purpose. I love it. I want to open myself to find my purpose. Ah, I love it. Both great. Awesome. Can I ask, in both of your guys' journeys, because you both kind of shared something that, again, that's like finding our purpose is re-remembering who we are. Like I kind of see those two as synonymous. Can I ask, for either of you, and you can put it in the chat or whatnot. I can't see anyone else's chat. Okay, hold on. Let me change that. Let's see. I changed mine. Oh, so are you only seeing like me, Tisha? You're not seeing Jess's responses? I'm gonna stop share for a second, guys. Okay. Let me know. Okay, panelists can host everyone, attendees can chat with everyone. All right, Jess, do you want to put something in the chat box? Oh, and then Tisha, I don't see her on right now. She maybe like went off and came on. I'll see. I can see yours, Jess, but that's not a great. I'll see if Tish hops back on. I'll kind of watch for that. Because for right now, I'm not seeing her in attendees. Okay. Well, for now, until we can confirm that. Okay. There we are. Okay. Tisha, just FYI, Jess, if you want to, we'll try this one more time. Jess, if you want to type something in the chat box, Tisha, I think we hopefully figured it out. So there we go. Jess just put something in the chat box. Tisha, let me know if you can see that. That way I can know if like you can see the whole chat conversation. No, you're good. You're good, Tisha. Okay, you can see it. Great. I just want to make sure then we can all see our answers. Okay, because my next question is, when it comes to each of you wanting to be open to find your greater purpose, can I ask at what point, and for right now, actually, I actually want you to kind of sit on the answer and then we might share, but just start thinking like, when did you start knowing or feeling like you had this greater sense of purpose? Because I really want to kind of just take a moment to point that out for a second, that most humans, it's not uncommon, and at different stages and points in our life, that we can get very pulled into just the day-to-day hustle and bustle busy of life. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it can be very easy to become disconnected to like sitting with greater questions of like, why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I meant to share? And not that like, also, to be honest, depending on your stage of life, that answer may change. Like if you're in the throes of, I don't know, just having your first kid or something like that, like in those first year, I'm sure your main focus is keeping that human alive. like, so it can change. But I'm just curious, I want you each to sit with, like, when did you start asking yourself those deeper questions? And sit on that a moment. And I'm going to share a little bit about, I am going to bounce around here a little bit, guys, just because I'm kind of going with the flow of conversation. Is that what I want you to know is that I had forgot for a long time who I was and why I was here. And so I've included some pictures here to incorporate the whole visual of like me trying to find me. So this one picture is from when I was 5-ish, maybe a little bit older, 6. And what I want you to know is when I was young, I thought I was a very confident. I mean, I appeared as a young child and probably even through middle school and high school. I appeared very confident in who I was. But it became very evident once I got into later years of high school and especially in college and kind of left like my home and my parents and whatever safety is I actually realized I had actually gotten really good at doing what I was supposed to do and doing what other people wanted for me, and God bless them, but my parents wanted me to be in a solid, safe career, and healthcare, because my mom was a nurse, healthcare screamed, well, that's a solid, safe, well-paying job and career. And so at the very strong urging of my parents, I went into healthcare and I worked at a hospital, just like my mom worked at a hospital. And so I realized, I was starting to realize, who am I actually living for? And am I really confident at being me and knowing myself? Or am I really good at actually just being a cookie cutter version of what other people really want me to be? And so in the middle picture, it's kind of when I started to notice that I had gone through my cousin, who was a year younger than me. She'd got brain cancer when she was 16, and then it ended up taking her when she was 18, and that, or just actually a couple weeks shy of her 18th birthday. And the middle picture there is me. We got to go on a Make-A-Wish cruise with her before she passed away. And it was around then that my whole life was kind of shaking, and I was watching someone who was around my age. Ultimately I could see that she was losing her battle to cancer and her life was going to come to an end. And it made me start to begin to just like question myself and my life and who am I living for? And so then the last picture here that I include on this journey where I had forgotten myself and started to find myself was this picture, is back around 2015, 2016. I had landed my dream job. I was working at Mayo Clinic as an occupational therapist, and I was supposed to be, it should have been like this was the dream, except for I realized it wasn't my dream at all. And I started to sell Mary Kay on the side. It was kind of my first taste of entrepreneurship. And I realized I really loved the freedom and flexibility of entrepreneurship, but I did not want to be selling makeup. Again, if I'm being honest, that was kind of like at the undertaking or at the recommendation of my mom because she loved Mary Kay makeup. So again, I was still kind of making decisions based on what other people thought were good for me versus what I thought was good for me. And so all of this to say is that I spent many years kind of like in the dark and veiled based on other people's desires for me, what everybody else wanted, not really knowing how to tune into myself. So ultimately, it's like what gave me the courage to finally leave a 5-figure, comfy, cozy, salaried healthcare job with, well, it came with a lot of safety. I felt safe in it, and benefits. And I would love to say that it was all intuition and inner wisdom. And that definitely played a part in it. But I think the biggest thing, to be honest, that drove me to dive deeper into myself, to help me remember why I'm here and who I am. I think the first thing here honestly trumped even my intuition, although my intuition was playing a heavy role of like, oh my God, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing something else. But really, it was actually the fear of losing myself. And so in those years that I was working at Mayo, I was like the most anxious and depressed that I'd ever been. And it didn't make sense because we were very comfortable. We were living comfortably, but I was really just living for the weekends. I hated going into work. And that's not to say that work in a hospital or in a healthcare career can't be purposeful. I had a lot of friends who enjoyed what we did in the rehab world every day. I did not, though. And I was getting scared. It was really more fear driven that I knew I needed to leave. And I knew ultimately I was going to need to take a leap out of healthcare, was because I just felt pieces of myself. It's kind of, I mean, this is kind of an exaggeration, but like disintegrating. I was like, I'm losing me, and I'm losing my, I mean, I hate to say it but like kind of my will to live. I was just like, what am I doing? That was probably the biggest driver for me to go on this journey of finding myself. All right, I'm gonna pause a second. Um, okay, thank you guys for sharing. Probably 20 years ago. All right, so Jess, probably 20 years ago, but I've known from energy work that there was a greater purpose evolving around 2018. I felt like there was a point when it would be revealed to me. Okay, I love it. I love it. Yeah, Jess, I feel like you are definitely, I mean, just me watching you, and we've been, I've been following you, and we've kind of connected a little bit, and it's really fun watching you like continue to find and step into your purpose. Tisha, I think it really started around 2016 for me. Yeah, prior to that, I'd been doing some learning and growing. After 2016, I really started feeling called to share what I was learning. Yes, yes. Oh, okay. I love it. Yes. So, but like both of you, in a sense, you feel like it feels like you're feeling called to share what you're learning, share more, share about your journeys. So I'm so excited you're here. You guys are in the right room. Because at the end of the day, so in our current society and how it's built and how the current conditioning is, although I think things are starting to shift, we have we've done the opposite of what I have on this slide here, meaning our current system really plugs us into learning how to quote unquote trust logic and reasoning, and like staying the course, staying on the safe path, doing what feels, I don't know, kind of like safe and consistent and linear. Like if we just think about it a little bit more, we'll get the answer. And that's kind of like our schooling heavily focuses on that. And I think especially for women have had a lot of different, I think, things that have been passed down societally for us. But I think one of the biggest things that we're not doing is teaching ourselves, our daughters, and our friends how to trust ourselves deeply from this inner knowing, this willingness to let go and surrender all of this stuff that's been conditioned into us. How do we like kind of decondition ourselves? So we want to start to replace intuition for logic. And I realize as I'm saying this out loud, it's not that we abandon logic and reason, but it's a both. We surrender into the divine to hold, instead of holding on for dear life, gripping and controlling our way through. So we think that if we just plan more, prepare more, think on it more, it's ultimately like we have this grip that something will somehow happen, but it's actually in the letting go and the surrendering that we can actually feel more safe. So on intuition, I am going to take a moment and ask, again, whether you're watching live or the replay. If you're here live, I'm going to have you put something in the chat box. If you're watching the replay, think about it, write it down. I'm curious, but when I say intuition, what do you think of? What do you think of? What is kind of your definition, your current working definition of intuition? So just know there's no right or wrong here, but if you're with me here, I'm going to have you throw in the chat box, what is your current definition? Inner knowing. Yes. Okay. Yes. I love that, Tisha. Inner knowing. Jess, what do you think of when you think of intuition? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that gut feeling, and it feels aligned. Yeah. Now, I will say this today, our conversation on intuition, I won't be going technically into a full deep dive on intuition per se and like how we can tune into it. I do have a PDF that I can share out though, that I can send out with the replay, where I give like kind of a little bit more about that and expand. If you're on the call, you maybe have you guys heard about the 5 clairs? I believe it's 5. Technically, there may be 7. But like how we receive intuitive information can be different for everyone. So Jess, when you mentioned gut feeling, that can be one way that we connect with and can know like, oh, this is my intuition speaking, because it's like you feel it in your body. So oftentimes we can call that clairsentient, because you just can, so some people can like feel it in their gut. Some people actually almost feel like body tingles. That's clairsentient. You're getting the information that like, yes, this is for me kind of through your body. Um, yes, comes through sometimes when journaling. Yes, absolutely. So when we're tuning into our clairs, as they call them, or our intuition, sometimes we can almost receive it like someone's talking to us. That's called clairaudient. But we know that the clairaudient, how we're receiving it, it's like really happening in our head. It's just like our inner dialogue, but you can tell it's coming from somewhere else. Some people are I'm gonna blank on the word, visual, clairvoyant. There we go. So you might like somehow see things, whether you see colors, again, all in your mind's eye, or you might see like some type of sign. So I just want you to know you can receive intuition in different ways and your inner knowing, and it can be different depending on the person. That also can be why sometimes intuition can feel confusing, because information may be coming into you differently than others. Okay, so thank you both for kind of putting in your intuition definitions all on point. Now I want you to ask yourself these questions when it comes to intuition. So on your piece of paper, I want you to write down now, on a scale of 0 to 5, and just know, like, honestly, number 1 and number 2 here are related, but not exactly. But on a scale of 0 to 5, how often would you say are you receiving intuitive messages, intuition downloads, intuitive information? And again, like number 1 and number 2 are kind of connected here, but just on a scale of 0 to 5, how often are you receiving some type of inner knowing or inner message? Like 0, not at all. I'm not getting anything. 1, I feel like I'm getting some intuitive hits here and there, or like minimally. 3 would probably be I'm getting intuitive hits so sometimes. 5, like you feel like you have a direct channel, you're getting intuitive messages all the time. 4, great. Okay, and then Tisha, same thing. Again, whether you want to put it in the chat box or write it down. Yep. Okay. How often? And then and that's okay. That's why you're here. Because here's what I want you to know. There's so many variations around intuition. I think because, one, we don't really talk about this very often openly. This is why I love having this conversation, and why I want to include it on day 1 today of us together, is that sometimes I think we hear intuition and we can think of it like, again, from our current conditioning, where it's like, how someone might ask, like, are you smart? Like, yes, I'm smart. Like, I can figure stuff out. Or no, like, no, not that you get that many people that say, like, no, I'm not smart. But we think it's like this on or off switch. Like, I'm either smart or I'm not. Or I'm either intuitive or I'm not. And what I want you guys to know is that there is a lot of gray and a lot of variables to like why you are or you're not receiving a lot of intuitive messages. And then another layer to that is like, do you trust the information that you're receiving? Are you acting on it? Or is your ego, yeah, exactly. Or is your ego either like stopping you from acting on it, or like kind of just said, or are we like just, we're busy in the lifing that we then don't always maybe act on the intuitive information. So I just want you to know that the discussion around intuition and receiving intuition and all that, it's not like it's an on or off. It's not like it's a yes or no. There's a lot of variables. So then thinking about the next question, how often are you taking time to be intentional, to sit down and connect with your intuition? And honestly, this is a hard one. So like, are you doing a daily intuitive check with yourself? Are you doing a weekly, monthly, or is it pretty sporadic? And again, write it down for yourself. If you want to put it in the chat box, you can. But the biggest thing is no judgment, is that it's just, for a lot of us who want to tap in more to intuition, but when we take time to sit down, we're like, you know what? I'm not really being that intentional though with sitting down to try to connect with my intuition. And that can be for a lot of reasons. So I want you to know the me of today, 2024, I took an intuition course for occupational therapists back in 2017, 2018. Around then. I was working with a holistic OT mentor, and I did a full deep dive into intuition. And I loved it because she included the science behind. We did intuitive exercises. Like it was really good, you guys. Don't get me wrong. And yet still, did I really embody and use and continue practicing my own intuitive practice following that amazing course that I was in for like, I think we worked together for almost 6 to 8 weeks back in 2017. No, I did not. I did not. It wasn't really until, again, probably 2020, 2021 that I started to realize, oh, I need to actually like figure out how to quiet my really crazy busy mind and actually spend time intentionally connecting with my intuition, or honing that skill. So I just want you to know, like, it's okay, but there can be a disconnect. Sure, I'm receiving intuitive information, but also am I being intentional with it? All right, let me see here. Yeah, struggling to quiet my thoughts and inner voice. That was me too, Tisha. Like it's like, okay, cool, this intuition thing is great, and I had learned a lot about it. But when you plopped me back into my everyday life at the time, it's like I was too busy, my mind was too busy, all the things. Yeah, just sporadic. I have notes in all sorts of places. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's a great, yeah. Sporadic. Okay. And so again, no judgment, but it's like it makes sense then, right? Like why? So it just know that intuition is a skill and a practice that we can hone. And for me, I can say this is true for me. I before was a person, again, and this was also my old programming, where like, let's say I loved being a learner and a student. So I was always really good about learning about different topics. And I wasn't always the best at that, embodying and using those things, because I was just like, oh, well, I got credit. I took another continuing ed course, or, oh, cool. I got through that, like, 8-week intuition experience with this person. Sweet, check, like learned it, done. And there was a disconnect for me of like, okay, sweet Maria, you have this whole long list of things you're learning, and that's awesome. But what am I actually embodying? Not much at the time. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And just know, like, again, we could go into it's a whole conversation, but like I just think, like, especially little girls, not to say that it wasn't boys too growing up, but I just think we were, I don't know, like raised to just be like really good doers, really good like students, like, oh, they'll just do it and check it off your list. But again, like not a lot of, well, are we practicing that? Are we embodying that? I just think our current school system is a lot of like, okay, check, cool, you learned that, move on. Like I don't know how many tests like I could pass and get an A, but then I would like totally forget all the information. Okay, and then the last thing, this one's big too. On a scale of 0 to 5, how likely are you to trust your intuition, even when it may go against logic and comfort zone? And I almost want to, I don't know, I almost want to make it its own second follow-up question, but kind of with this one, on the scale of 0 to 5, how likely are you to trust your intuition? This also kind of means trust it enough to act on it, like to actually do something with whatever the inner knowing is. So how likely are you to trust and act on it, and kind of combining them? So 0, not very likely at all. And that likely means that, our ego and our logic and our other self-doubt is getting in the way. 1, I trust it a little. 3, I trust it, like it's happening. 5, like full on trust and full on act on. So just think about where you're at with that. Yeah. Yeah. I trusted 4, act on 3. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I'm curious, just when you said, so 1, that's normal. I agree. I also think you're right. I think these are kind of two different questions. And I might even change that up on this slide. But yeah, it's really more like how likely are you to trust it? And then the follow-up, the fourth one would be how, on a scale of 0 to 5, how likely are you to act on it? So I agree. I think they're two different things. And Tisha's a 3. Yeah, I can feel that it's the right thing, but acting on it is scary, even if I know it's right. Yeah, absolutely. That's totally normal. Just I want to ask, what do you mean when you say it's also hard in family? Do you mean like it's hard to sometimes trust your intuition and act on it within your family, or like when it's for your family, and then it's hard when others say they're into it? Oh, when their intuition is something different. Jess, do you mind giving me an example? Because I think I'm understanding where you're going with that, but do you mind, like, can you expand on that, what you put? Mm, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a really good point. Is that with intuition and deep like self work, and to be honest, we kind of talk about this in the group healing container, higher self awakening, and then we go deeper on this even in like the membership called the circle after. But at the end of the day, we are human beings, and the focus is, to really deepen our connection to self. However, we're also, we exist in community, we exist in relationship. And so I agree. Now I get what you're saying. And like, we can absolutely have a situation come up within a family system, maybe even like within a work dynamic, a work team, where someone, wants to go this direction because they, that's what their intuition is saying. And we'll stay with the example of if it's happening within your family and a spouse or a partner feels differently and deeply about something. What I will say is how intuition can kind of like coexist in relationships or family units is that's where it can be helpful to try to figure out what is the best path forward where each of us feels like we're still staying true to our values and our integrity and can come to either we can come to a compromise, like we can find something, a comfortable path forward that feels somewhat aligned for both of us and doesn't compromise either of our values, or it really depends on the situation, Jess, but like it, let's just say if there was something that was going on, let's say that involved like my son and my husband and I were seeing different eye to eye. I will say though, I tend to have a stronger intuition, and that's not always the case. And I don't really like to say it like that, but I will say if if I'm getting something, my husband will usually be like, okay, like if that's just like what you're seeing and if that's what it feels like, I don't know. So I think sometimes I think within partnerships, it can sometimes be like, you know what, it feels like you feel really strongly about this, and assuming no one's going to be harmed, um, we can sometimes concede to our partner's intuition if, again, assuming like there's no right or wrong, no one's going to get hurt either way. So I definitely think compromises can happen within families as well. Big picture here though is that just knowing that like, so intuition, it's not just an on or off switch, and I just want you to know like all of this related to intuition can be improved upon. That's the other big thing. It's not like, oh, I'm just like either born really intuitive and I'm just the natural person who can trust it and act on it, or I'm not. Like that's not how it works. It is something that we can all improve upon. And let's see, I'm not sure, is that that might be in your guys' way too. Okay. um what I want you to remember is that you are a spark of the divine. You are divine. And I will not say this is not going to be a whole religion class. And to if for me to be able to go deeper into this topic too, I will say I just released a new podcast episode, well, a couple of them. Podcast episode 61 though, talks about a little bit more about like my definition of spirituality and how spirituality is such this big expansive topic and reconnecting back with our soul selves and our soul essence, and that can happen within any kind of faith system. So I always tell people like spirituality is up here, and then religious affiliations, or if you have a religious belief that you practice, just know that like that happens in different ways, and it's kind of each religious affiliations groups kind of putting their own, I don't know, like their own box around it, their own labels, their own how they talk about things, and that's its own construct. But spirituality exists within that, but also outside of that. It's bigger than that. And I say that because this can fit into whatever your belief system is. So, whatever you want to call that higher entity, I will say personally for myself, I grew up Catholic. However, I have found through my own journey, I do not subscribe to all of the beliefs of Catholicism, and I've really expanded on my own spiritual journey. That my spirituality kind of exists outside of currently any one religious entity, but that is for each person to decide. So I will say what you call that higher being might be God, it might be divine, it might be source, but there is this higher, thing, entity, vibration, energy, the divine, that ultimately, it's not about a hierarchy, but it's kind of like the one, shall we say. So I just want you to know that like exists all around us. And then we also have our higher self and our spirit guides and our angels that we can connect with. And then I don't want to say like, but at the most primitive part of ourselves is our kind of our human primitive survival brain, also called like our ego. It's like logic, self-doubt, survival, fear, like all of that has to run. It is our most primitive part of our brain, but it also is necessary. So I'm also not someone that, as we're doing this intuitive work, again, it's not about banishing or resisting a part of ourselves. At the end of the day, we are human. We do need to stay alive. Our ego has a very valid job for keeping us alive. However, it should not be running the ship, right? Like oftentimes our ego and fear is what is typically in our driver's seat until we become more conscious and aware of like, why is fear running the show versus doing the inner work to allow our higher self, our inner wisdom to be more of like in the driver's seat. So we are working on improving this connection to not just rely on ego and fear and worry and doubt, but to expand into higher states of consciousness, higher states of awareness, and remember who we really are. Because it is my belief that for soul-led business owners, spiritual entrepreneurs, soulpreneurs, that when we use our fully unleashed spiritual gifts and intuition, this is the fastest way to 10x your business, income, and impact without burnout. And that's a mouthful. But at the end of the day, it's unplugging from the belief that in order to build a successful business that has impact, that helps people, that also allows you to make a decent living wage, can only be done through hustle, grind, kind of like patriarchal power and like this show of force. We are actually moving away from that of how can I tap into more of my divine feminine gifts, my spiritual gifts, my intuition, because I have found personally for me, that has been the biggest accelerator for my business was doing the healing work so that I could connect with and tap into my intuition. And that kind of previews me into what we're going to talk about more tomorrow. So I'm actually going to, again, I'm going to skip around because I'm going to come back to this channeled message. Let's see, move that up a little bit. So I'm going to come back to that. That kind of led into what I want you to preview and know for the upcoming days of Ascend is we're going to really be talking about what's blocking your intuition. So what makes it feel like sometimes it's more of a trickle, just like trickling in, but barely getting anything versus a flow. Like how can we increase our flow of receiving more inner knowing and intuitive information? How can we stop second guessing ourselves and kind of like getting stuck in the inaction part of it? How do we stand up and show up in our full light in our business? How that mind and ego can protect us and keep us safe when we are trying to grow our business and how that's kind of counterintuitive for us. And then I will reveal more about the higher self awakening framework that I use and teach in this signature healing container for female entrepreneurs. And I will invite you to that then for sure on next week, day 3, Tuesday. Okay, so I just want you to know kind of what's coming and what to expect. And a little bit here, because I'm just being guided that it's like the last thing I'll do is share a little bit of a message from the guardians of the Akashic Records. Oh, and you know what? I just realized I missed that slide of like, what is it? So it'll all happen, I promise. So just some things to think about though, is I want you to journal any day one takeaways that you got from day one today. What are some things that you're like, that you're like sitting with? You got some shifts on, you got curious about, new perspectives. And then I want you to, over the weekend, consider what are you wanting to call in as being a part of this experience, whether you're watching live or the replays, and what are you willing to let go of to get there? Because oftentimes it's not just about like writing down all of our desires, although that's part of it. It's also realizing, but like, who am I going to have to be and how am I going to have to change? What am I going to have to let go of to get to that place where I feel like I am more certain? I am more aware and open to intuitive information, to my higher self, to my higher purpose. So these are some things that I want you to be thinking about over the weekend until we get to day 2. And okay, before I channel in this message and share a little bit more about the Akashic Records, I'm going to pause a second. Do you guys, I've done a lot of talking. Do you guys have any questions or thoughts currently on anything that's been shared? Or can you give me a thumbs up if you're good? Okay, good. Okay, awesome, Tisha. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear. Okay, good. Okay, so again, I have more YouTube videos as well about the Akashic Records. So what I'm going to say about what it is and what we're tuned into and connected into right now is I want you to know that there are different. It sounds like more. How do I want to say this? I'm going to say this to make it tangible, but it's really not as, I don't know, as big as it seems. There are different planes of existence, and planes of existence only are really separated by the vibrational frequency that's happening. So we often talk about how we are in the 3D world right now. And in the 3D world, atoms and things are moving at a certain vibration so that like we can see each other. We're matter, like we exist, right? Like you can touch me. I could if we were together, right? Like you can give people hugs, you can touch the table, you can feel the chair underneath you. We're in the 3D world of matter based on how fast the atoms are moving in the 3D. Then there are other planes of existence. And what happens at each plane of existence is vibration happens at a faster speed. And a lot of what I'm talking about here can honestly also now be proven by quantum physics, by science. Like research studies have also, they're proving what we once thought was unprovable or unknown. So in the 4D, 4D is like the next vibration. That would be when someone recently passes away and they leave, their body is no longer in the 3D world, but their soul, again, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be shifted or transformed. So the soul goes to the 4D level. That's often where our most recently passed loved ones exist. It's where some spirit guides can exist. And then you can raise your frequency and go up to the 5th plane of existence. The 5th plane of existence is who I'm channeling messages from. They are called the guardians. They protect the Akashic records, which are in the 6th plane of existence. And on the 5th plane of existence, when you raise and you're at that frequency, they're called ascended masters. So it's our highest high vibrational light being team. It's your angels, it's your high vibrational spirit guides. It can be, when I say ascended masters, that's often like who we're going to think of as the souls of people who walked the earth, and we knew them as Jesus or Buddha, or some will say like Mother Teresa, depending on your belief system. But that would be ascended master level. And the ascended masters are who protect, and they're the guardians of the Akashic records. The Akashic records is an energetic blueprint of everything about you, everything about me, everything about this pen, everything about this call and this group that's existing. Everything has an Akashic records. So similar to how we say in research, how they're saying like the body keeps the score, the body remembers everything, right? So like past experiences, negative or positive, can be held in the body. Well, to be honest, everything is held energetically in the Akashic records. It's why we can pull up memories. It's why we can know things either from this lifetime, or you may have seen in dreams, or you've just had maybe glimpses of past lives. Like we'll get into that a little bit more on day 2. But anyways, like the reason why all of this exists and it happens and it's all happening now is because it is stored somewhere, and it's stored in the Akashic records. So when I'm doing soul readings or when I'm channeling from the Akashic records, it's not me. I'm tapping into the guardians of the records to deliver a message or to answer someone's question. Again, if we're doing a soul reading. So I just want you to know it's not me, I'm using my own psychic intuitive information to channel the message that's coming through. And that's kind of who we're talking to. So I will say, if you have more questions about that, please feel free afterwards. I also have a few minutes after. I'm going to channel the message right now, but I can hang on if anybody has questions about that after, or I'll send you, I share more about it on my YouTube channel, but okay. For the time sensitive thing, I'm just going to share what they want us to remember about why we are here. So this is for the collective, whether you're watching live or the replay. All right, so the message that the collective, or that the collective guardians want to share with this group watching live or the replay is, of course, the theme is remember why you're here, but we're going to go deeper than that. It's stop playing small. So in the human world, things can often feel like, oh, it's ironic that things can actually feel grandiose, like so big. Who am I to do that? I don't have time to do that. How am I supposed to bring this vision that I have in my heart out? Or how am I supposed to see my way out of the weeds? And what they're saying is that's when we're actually getting stuck in that ego survival aspect of our brain, and we're playing it small. We're thinking too small. And quite frankly, we're thinking of ourselves as small. Like, I'm just one dot. Who am I to do this? Like, that is one of the beliefs and the barriers that's keeping us from like getting through the thick, the weeds of the beliefs, the doubts, the fears, is like this smallness. Like, who am I to be able to cut through all this junk and then connect into my higher power? So they're wanting us to remember that we are not so small. We are a spark of the divine. We are everything. Like, everything is shared. Who we are and what we are at a spiritual and soul level is, we're made out of the same matter as the planet, as the stars, as the oceans. Like, think of how powerful an ocean is. They're wanting me to go with an ocean analogy, so we'll go with it. Like, think about how powerful an ocean is. You look at an ocean and it's like, it's so vast and it's so huge. And that's what the guardians want to remind us. That's what we are. We're not just like a speck, a kernel of like a speck of sand on a beach. Like, that's kind of how we're viewing ourselves, and that's not what we are. We are the vastness of the whole beach. We are the vastness of the whole ocean. We are everything. And when we remember that we are everything, everything starts to feel possible again. But we have to begin to disconnect from the belief that, like, oh, I'm so small. Oh, I couldn't do this. That is the conditioning of different trauma and different experiences that have happened to us here on earth. But that is not the truth. That is not the truth. You are not small. You are expansive, just as expansive as the ocean. And so their recommendation for us over the weekend, in addition to some of the things that I already mentioned, is this weekend, every time you connect to water, whether you're drinking water, I don't know, it's not going to be that hot unless, depending on where you're at, maybe you're playing in water, maybe you're washing your face, maybe you're taking a shower or a bath. But anytime you interact with water over the next 3 days until we get to day 2, is I want you to think that you are just like water. You are as expansive as water. You are as big, you are as powerful as the ocean. That is something that we can connect to. Okay, that is the message that I wanted to share. That is the gist of where we're going. I'm going to stop share here. And in the chat box, I will say, if